So at what point did you think that you were actually going to be going to music?
I never thought of anything else. I never thought of anything else. My first musical experiences, my first experiences in life took place in the great little community in Sheffield, Alabama, which is in the northwest corner. And it's where Helen Keller and W.C. Handy come from. So I grew up with a lot of lore. But the musical part, of course, came from W.C. Handy because I used to sing St. Louis blues for candy in grocery stores when I was about 3. And I got a lot of candy. Growing up in a community like that, you couldn't escape being aware of, you know, and an appreciator. You could draw a crowd in a minute if you went out on outside with a horn or a drum or something, and you know, really got it going. You wouldn't take any time at all to draw a crowd. So it was in the air. Well, I was selling newspapers, and during the wartime, World War II, newsprint was becoming scarce, and I had sold the papers for 3 or 4 years, you know, because it was really inspiring the way the customers who bought the black papers. They were so full of all kinds of inspiring examples, and that's why I already learned about Duke Ellington and Count Basie and Nat King Cole and all of these people, never dreaming I would then work with them and know them. But selling the newspapers to all of these there were people that I knew down there who were old enough when I was selling newspapers. These people were former slaves. I'm talking about the 1940s, and these people were 100 years old, some of them, you know. So they were adults when they were emancipated. So they remembered things, but they generally could not read. And the arrangement with the papers, I had a reputation there. The ones who couldn't read, they would buy the paper for a nickel, and I would have to read it to them. So I'd sit down and read it to them. And as my reward, after I'd finished reading the paper and they'd looked at all the pictures, they'd give me back the paper and I could go and sell it to somebody else. Well, it influenced me. It gave me an appreciation of what was possible for me, and that they had really made progress because they had seen emancipation. Their situation was not, you know, was not great during that period, but it wasn't what it was, you know. And then all this encouragement, and by the fact that these people would allow a child to read them a paper, and they pay for it, and then give him the paper back to go sell it again, that was encouragement, you know. That was I took that as a big sign of encouragement. They wanted to see me, you know, get on. Well, I don't have much to say about it, except that in my world and in my time, we were taught that you can't let that hold you down or hold, you know, keep you back. You can't afford to be bitter. You know, you have to be giving, and you have too much responsibility to be bitter. Bitter is luxury. You can't afford that. And I went through the Army and I later joined the Tuskegee Airmen, and that's where I learned how to play the horn and the bass, and where I met Mitchell, who taught me how to play the bass, you know. So I was advised then, because music was iffy, still is. I was advised that it would pay to know how to do something else as well, which is why when I finally made it to Yale as an undergraduate, as a student, I took the advice and learned something else. I did pre-med as well. So somebody was going to get butchered if I didn't make out. it was there that I learned about Paul Hindemith by reading a jazz magazine with Charlie Parker. In an interview, somebody was in an interview, just like I'm being interviewed by you now. Some writer was interviewing Charlie Parker in Downbeat magazine and said, Bird, if you could do with the next few years, whatever you like to do, what would that be? He said, that's easy. He says, there's a German cat at Yale. And he says, his name is Paul Hindemith. I like everything I've ever heard of his, and I've read a few things. And he says, he's teaching composition at Yale. And he said, if I had the wherewithal, I would go there, sit at his feet, and learn me some music. Now, I'd never heard of Paul Hindemith. Huh? By this time, I'd been in the Army, in the Air Force, Army and Air Force, 3.5 years. I was 17 now by that time. I said, I don't know who this cat Paul Hindemith is, but if he's good enough for Charlie Parker to want to come and sit at his feet, then I'm going to check it out. So I wrote a letter to the Yale School of Music, and they sent me back a reply and an application. And I sent it in, and they sent me back an invitation to come for an audition and some, written entrance stuff like that. And miraculously, they let me in. And Uncle Sam was my sugar daddy. Uncle Sam was obligated to educate me, put me through all the schooling I want, anywhere I could get in. So what have I got to be bitter about?
Yeah. Sure.
Powell, who was this prodigy, had played with Benny Goodman when he was 17. He came to study with Hindemith, same time I did. Benny Goodman came to New Haven. I was playing in the New Haven Symphony, so 18, I'm playing in the New Haven Symphony. Benny Goodman comes to town. Mel Powell is playing, he plays Mozart with the orchestra. I'm sitting at the horn, playing in the orchestra. Then Mel Powell comes out to play with Benny, and they had just have a drummer. And Mel spots me in the horn section, and he says to Benny, he says, the guy in the horn section is a bass player. Let's invite him up to play. Because Mel and I played, around not gigs, not for money, but just when we happened to be in the same building together. He played Sweet Georgia Brown or what, So there I got to play with Benny Goodman when I was 18 years old in the Yale Bowl, and the local papers picked all that up. Local boy makes good, which meant then that I got the best work around town as the bassist, and the new kid enough. So what have I got to be bitter about?
What made the chemistry work?
Well, desperation. And all that rhythm. The chemistry was well, first we learned how to make use out of what we had. I didn't start playing the French horn to play jazz, but once I got into playing with Mitchell as the piano and the bass, said, I've got some other tonal possibilities here. Let's expand the palette. And then we had this fabulous stroke of good luck playing in gin mills in New York mostly at that time. And then we made some records and we started traveling. One night we were playing in Birdland, opposite Count Basie. And here was another good thing. It wasn't so good, we didn't feel that good at the time, but we were a group reduced to its irreducible minimum. There's only 2 guys, but we played 3 instruments, which meant then that club owners and promoters found it attractive to balance their budgets whenever they were going to have the most expensive and the most famous names in music, in our kind of music. They would balance it by hiring the cheapest, and that was us. So we got to open for everybody. We opened for Louis Armstrong. We opened for Ella Fitzgerald. We opened for Lena Horne. We opened for Duke Ellington. We did, that was the world there for us that way.